what was the most impactful thing that we did? It's hiring. It's, common advice. It's it's not a revolutionary thing to say, but it holds so true. Spending an extra month or extra time with your hiring will pay dividends across the board down the line, and planning those out in a way that you're ready for. It's a cliche, hire good people, hire the best, but it's a cliche for a reason.
Hey everyone, I'm Debbie Madden, the host of the Scaling Tech podcast, and today I've got Nolan with me. Hey Nolan, how are you?
I'm all right. How are you?
Good. So for those that don't know, Nolan Frausto, did I say your last name correctly? Frausto?
You did, yes.
Excellent. So we're talking about deciding when to ditch versus reuse software, which I know that everybody here has come across in one way or the other. So I'm super excited to talk about your experience. So Nolan is the CTO of a company called AdaptedMind. They are an ed tech startup in the Bay Area. So Nolan joined back in 2020, led the rapid growth during the COVID-19 pandemic when ed tech became essential for many. Ed tech is always like ebbs and flows in contrast to lots of other industries. So I'm sure it's a really interesting time to join. And so we're talking about Nolan's experience with his decision to not reuse a bunch of software. And so you recently led your team through a full software rewrite, which is unusual even for yourself. Most CTOs and heads of engineering want to reuse, not throw out software, not throw out existing code. And even you told me that 99% of the time, so do you. So like, let's start from the beginning. Like, you came to AdaptedMind. Like, how did you assess the quality of the code so that you started even thinking about, okay, maybe I should do a rewrite here? Like, walk us through the beginning.
Yeah. So, in terms of assessing the code, like you mentioned before, my intent was not to say, all right, let's start from scratch here. The intent was to, join, talk with a lot of people, get the lay of the land, see where things can be improved, and then kind of incrementally go at it and go forward with the team. Still the process I would recommend, and still the process I would do, in any new situation. But talking through my time when I joined AdaptedMind, it didn't start with any, core metric. I think there's something called WTFs per minute. So within those first, even few days, that metric, where you just ask yourself, you're going through stuff and you're saying, WTF, what is this? That metric was going off the charts. So that's kind of the first kind of gut sign that, okay, something needs to change here. Going from that to, digging into the data modeling, digging into the usage, digging into, how can we scale a team around this code base? That eventually led to the decision that, we need to create a foundation that's stable and start there.
So a couple of digging in questions here. So how old was the code base and how big was the team when you made this decision?
So both of those are, again, a pretty unique situation. The code base was about 10 years old at that time.
Okay.
And the team was just the founder and another engineer. So again, the scaling side of things had not really happened.
Okay.
And when COVID happened, there's suddenly, AdaptedMind was being run more as like a lifestyle business between the founders for a decade. And then when COVID happened, everything went off the charts. So usage, spend, just the DB went down a few times right before I joined. So everything was going crazy, which is great, right? A great problem to have. But it really solidified the need. So if, we're going to make this company a growth-oriented company, it really needs to start from the beginning with the code in a way that's stable. A lot of it was written, again, by one or two people over the course of a decade. So a lot of that, and it was written very clearly, like trying to find that product market fit. So just throw something at the wall, there was no there's no version control even when I joined, which was wild. So you have files of like, play.js v1, v2, v65.a, like, and it was just so hard to navigate and so hard to, just get that initial understanding even, that, really, the more and more I dove in, the more it became very clear that, okay, this to scale this in whatever way you mean scale, we need to change it.
Okay, so now you've made the decision. What's step one? How did you embark on that rewrite journey?
Yep. So step one is the same step one that you apply in many situations with, is understanding. So understanding the current state, of the code, of the data, of the processes. And so I start with the database. That for me, data is the core of a company. It's what you base decisions off of. It's what you code against. It's central. It's the pillar of your code. It's what you use. So I start with understanding the database, understanding the data structures, understanding how things are set up, which again, in this case, was a very rough process. So there was a JSON being stored kind of willy-nilly, with no consistency in a single column for different things. There was tables named like object to object, and then object it was hard to understand what object was. It could be multiple things on different use cases. So it was really outlining all that data and then mapping out what we're going to transform it into. So we redid the whole database schema. So understanding the product, understanding what we want out of our data, and formatting in a way that is, you can just look at and understand. That's the sign for me of good structure, good code. You don't need to be walked through or ask many questions or ask WTF. It should be apparent just by going in.
That makes sense. And I'm sure many would agree with that, if not most. So then you've got customers though, right? It's 10-year-old codebase. You've got customers and things are now all of a sudden going, scaling to the point where the database has gone down. So how do you make this changeover, without taking the software down or without having to train all new groups of people on using it? Or how does the switchover work? Was it like a big bang flip a switch, or did you do it piecemeal? Like, walk me through. I know, because there's different approaches here. And so how did you make the switch, like in reality over time?
Yeah, decision was made. Okay, let's rebuild the code base. Let's restructure the data. We have 5 different subjects that we teach children: math, science, social studies, reading, and we have one we call super skills, which is like emotional intelligence. So the idea was we're going to move over one subject at a time. And we started with our kind of most simple subject, which is science.
Science is the most simple. Okay.
In terms of the way this product was, yes, I think it was the most recent thing built. So it had, there's a little more consistency to it, and it made more sense. So we started with science and kind of chunked that out from the rest of the application and built it using modern technologies: Go, TypeScript, React, PostgreSDB. So, and then when we launched it to users, it wasn't just a switch. It wasn't just, okay, we're just going to try for it and hope everything goes well. We A/B tested all of our migration. So we set up a system in which 50. Well, started with very low, actually 1%, and then you scale up to 10%, then you go 50. But a percentage of users will still see the old system. A percentage of users will see the product on our new system, and the product might have had some minor visual improvements, but ideally what we're looking for is no change. So that's we A/B test pretty often here, and that was how we approached making sure that the migration wasn't going to be breaking the experience in any way for our users.
And then was there anything unique about any of the 1.5? So you essentially did 5 switchovers. I'm sure there were more details in the middle, and A/B tested and went iteratively. Was there any one module that behaved differently in a surprising way, or did they all kind of follow suit in terms of the switchover?
They all mostly followed suit in terms of the switchover. The the big difference for us was, again, the data side. We're collecting the data wasn't not only kind of not well organized, it wasn't being collected at a granular level. So we'd be able to see, oh, this student got this question wrong, but how did they get it wrong? When did this happen? All this was missing. So suddenly, with our new system, we had a lot more data to go off of and a lot more visibility, which also helps you grow in the future now that you have those
Yeah,
things.
yeah. And so how end to end, about how long did this take? So the code base was built over 10 years. Um, and then how long did it take till the last subject was switched over and everything was up and running?
Yeah, I think it was planned to take a year and a half. It was a very ambitious plan. It ended up taking 2.5 years. So it was very long-term project, very impactful project. And you know what they say about things being double the cost and double the time with your estimates. That proved itself to be true once again. Um, that said, it's a decision I would make again, and there's not regrets for going that route. Um, One of the reasons it took us so long actually was because of the A/B testing systems that we had set up along the way. So, that adding that extra layer of safety in terms of we're able to switch back and forth between new and old systems seamlessly. There's a lot of syncing involved, especially when you're talking different data structures and different code entirely. So building out those systems did add a significant amount of time, but it also, we were able to launch this without any significant user issues, without any downtime, and with only improvements going in. So, we had a lot of things end of life that we were using in the old system while this migration was going on, and we were able to upgrade those seamlessly as well. So there's a lot of moving pieces when you're talking through something like this.
What was the size of the team that did the rewrite? So if the initial code was written by, one or two people, I'm sure more people touched it over the years, but now you're talking about switching over 5 modules, sunsetting other things, making some performance improvements. How many was it? Very lean team, or was it? Talk to me about the number of people involved over the 2 years.
Still lean team, but the team grew over the course of those 2 years, and that's a good point. Not just
Yeah,
the team, all the processes we were using in terms of how we launch things, how we go through our sprints, even having sprints, all that happened in that 2.5 years. So we are now still a small team, but we have 7 engineers. We also are launching a mobile app, which this rewrite allowed us to do so. It would have been extremely difficult to have consistency between a web and an app with the old code base. So that's a win there as well. But all that said, the team, not just the engineering side, but the company grew. We're around 30 to 40 people now, significantly since in that period of time. So, and since I joined, so there was a lot of not just code changes, not just data changes. There was a lot of growing across the board, which is its own, initiative, its own project, its own thing. Yeah.
that's a very impressive that you were able to have success across so many pillars, right? Company scale, customer base scale, code quality, tech team. I mean, and it sounds like I'll ask the direct question, but it sounds like um, this change was overwhelmingly positively received by both the team and by your customers, your users. Is that true, or was there any kind of bumps along the way?
Oh, of course there's bumps. I don't think there's a world where you could do such thing
Right.
without it. But looking back, it's like everything we're in a very good place. Along the way, there was a lot of uncertainty by the founders, like why do we need to do this? I think if you're in something for any significant amount of time, you get tunnel vision a bit. You're used to it. It makes sense to you. But then having outsiders come in and say, "Hey, WGF, what's going on?" It can not always be well received. So really have to hand it to the founders that they It took convincing, but they were willing to be convinced. They're willing to have their mind changed, which you don't always see.
Yeah. Yeah. As a founder myself, I'm like, I have like a little like chest pain when when you say that.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah. And I mean, kudos to you and your team because you would have had to have had, like real ongoing trust for them to be able to, take a leap of faith at the beginning and then kind of stick with it. And also they must have seen, visible outcomes as well to be able to feel confident that they should stick with it.
Yeah, as you mentioned, it's not always easy as a founder to be like to let that go and give that trust. So there was some earning that along the way, and again, as we're building out the team was through this migration has now a incredibly detailed view of how the product works, how the data is structured, how everything is put together. So it gave that solidity there as well.
That's awesome. So I know that you had said two things. You still believe that 99% of the time this is not the way to go, and that in this particular case you would do it this way again, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that. Are there any other? So that's obviously a reflection. Are there any other big lessons learned that you want to share with us that we haven't covered? Because I think we've hit on some very interesting bits of the journey. But is there any other lessons or aha moments that we haven't talked about that you want to highlight?
Yeah, I think lessons zooming out a bit during this whole process. What was the most impactful thing that we did? And it's hiring. So you hire good people. Yeah, it's common advice. It's it's not a revolutionary thing to say, but it holds so true. So being spending an extra month or extra time with your hiring will pay dividends across the board down the line, and planning those out in a way that you're ready for. So we made a mistake during this process. We earlier on in the migration, we planned out to have front end and back end separate. So we'd have front end engineers, we have back end engineers, and so we hired a front end engineer, and we tried to separate it out in that way and grow it that way, and we just weren't ready for it. We're all full stack now. That hire unfortunately didn't work out. It wasn't. It's just not a good fit, but for this reason. But it probably cost us 6 months and a lot of money on its own, just making that decision too quickly. So so those types of decisions really are important. And again, it's a cliche, hire good people, hire the best, but it's a cliche for a reason.
Right, exactly. Well, unfortunately, we're kind of nearing the end of our time together, but I really love this story because we kind of see the journey from, okay, you're coming in from the outside, assessing, but not, what we didn't talk about is like, you didn't get stuck. You weren't like paralyzed. Like you came in and you said, wait, this is not what I thought I was going to be doing here. Right. And then, you kind of were able to move forward in a way that you both had efficiency with the change, but also A/B tested, right? So you balanced like quality, speed, and iteration in a way. Like we didn't really dive into that, but I think like from my view looking in, like that is very impressive how you were able to kind of have that like reflection and also that kind of commercial sense to, all right, we got to get through this. And then your executives had the commercial sense to kind of stay along for the ride and and then kind of come out the other side with success and learnings. So I love it. I love this story.
I appreciate that. Again, looking back, I agree. But in some of those moments during the journey, there's they call it what, the pit of despair or something, that you're going the good direction, you're doing the right thing, but it's it can get so hard sometimes, and you keep going and you work your way out of that to a better place.
Yeah, I've been there myself, and I'm sure both of us will be there again. That's right.
Oh yeah.
That's having that balance of taking that leap. You're never going to have all the data when you have to make a decision, and then just like kind of measuring and going and measuring and going. And so this is like that. It was such a good story of that. So, yeah, Nolan, thank you so much for sharing, for being with us today on Scaling Tech Podcast. And thank you to everyone for listening and watching.
Thank you
Bye.
for having me.